This is episode 127, where you'll be meeting the adventurous Maria Doyle. Maria supports people who are in the business of sharing their skills, their expertise and knowledge by systemizing, optimizing and digitalizing that knowledge, turning it into the quality learning experiences that create real change. Building a business and life that blends contribution, fulfillment, and financial reward? Welcome to Your Next Chapter, the show for women in their 40s and beyond who are on this adventure. I'm Angela Rasmus, and I'm delighted you're here. And welcome back to another episode of the Your Next Chapter podcast in this special Under the Radar series where we're celebrating my first book, but much more importantly, talking and having fabulous wholehearted conversations with women who have found themselves in the cycle of change and all of the adventures that happen as a result. And I have probably one of the most adventurous women in the world on the call with me today. Now, Maria Doyle, who is currently in Oslo in Norway, has actually travelled to over 40 countries within 16 overseas postings with her previous chapters. And we're going to dial down today and find out all about the pivot points and some major changes that have been at real key areas in Maria's life and how she managed to work with expansive versus constrictive fear to help her step into all of these mini chapters. So Maria, thank you so much for spending time here talking with us today.
No worries. Thanks, Angela. Lovely to be here, as usual, talking to a like-minded soul.
That's what we need. And it's the power of example, I think, which really opens doors into our next chapters, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Well, one of the things that I loved when I was reading through the background, which you shared in the Your Next Chapter stories on the website, was, and I put this in the air quotes, if you could see me air quoting, the story of my life, take an opportunity and run with it. If you don't like the direction it's going in, pull up, take a deep breath and pivot. So it sounds as though this is really running through your DNA. So could you talk to us about what your previous chapters have been that have led you up to this point?
For sure. Look, I think the reason I wrote that comment was I think a lot of us are brought up in an education system and a society where the idea is, life's hard, or, hard work is what gets you through, and, slog through things that, don't quite feel right, but it's what you should do, or it's what you have to do, or it's what society tells you that you should be doing. And I just think there is an element of truth to that. Like, there is an element of work that needs to be done, and there is an element of pushing through things that are slightly uncomfortable at some points to get through to the other side. But I think that we are raised with this, not necessarily in childhood, but I just think in society in general, we're raised with this idea that life has to be hard, that it has to be something that, that you have to slog through. And I don't believe it has to be that way. So a lot of the different chapters I've had, I graduated from university thinking I'll just take a gap year. I'll just do like a year of teaching English and then I'll come back and get a real job. And that gap year turned into 8 or 9 years of on the road, teaching English, teacher training, going from post to post, going, yeah, this is nice. I've had enough of this now. Like, what's next? And looking on the job boards and going, I think I'll go there. And getting on a plane and going somewhere else and enjoying a new culture and a new country and a new place. And I think that 8 or 9 years set me up for knowing that when my time was done somewhere, it was done and it was ready to sort of open your eyes and look around and just jump on board with the next opportunity. So, yeah, I think it's, I don't know, I guess those 8, 9 years on the road really taught me that if you weren't enjoying something, it was time to assess your options. And like I said, pull up, take a deep breath, go, okay, well, how much longer do I have to be in this position financially or contractually or whatever? What do I have to see out to get to the other end before I can pull up, take a deep breath and pivot? So, yeah, I guess that's how I've lived my whole life, really, since my 20s.
That sense of flexibility and that really trusting yourself and almost, with someone I think about my own background, which feels by comparison, and I use that word comparison very carefully because I know it's one of my Achilles heels, but that relative sense of freedom and surety. I think the way that I was conditioned, and let's use that expression, was that safety was important. Don't take so many chances. You don't know what's around the corner. But it was framed in such a way as there could be something bad around the corner, as opposed to there could be something exciting and light and delightful around the corner. How much of your upbringing do you think has, like, the formative influences that you had to be able to create that sort of sense within you of let's go out on an adventure?
It's an interesting question. Look, I was raised in a business, so I watched very hardworking parents sacrifice everything to create a business that was a winner, that was super successful. And part of that was that we got to go on holidays and travel and adventure, and so I got that sort of that travel bug quite early on. I knew there was something bigger and than just the suburb that we lived in. So I guess I had those influences from a really young age. And then at high school, I won a scholarship to go to Italy, and that was really the turning point for me. I came back into year 12 after 3 months of being on exchange at an Italian high school, and I just thought, wow. Like, there's more to life. There's just more to life than a 9-to-5 job in the suburbs. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, and I'm not judging anyone who has a 9-to-5 job and lives in the suburbs. It works for a lot of people. It brings people a lot of joy to do, things that most people do. But I knew that from the age of 17, sitting in my desk in year 12, I knew that my life was not going to be 9 to 5. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I knew that there was more to life than that. So, yeah, did I take a lot of risks? No, not really. I mean, if you speak to my parents, they'll probably say yes. But I don't know. I calculated my risks and went, okay, well, I'll go to university and I'll get this degree. I'll go out and get a job. I'll put money in the bank. I never spent money that I didn't have. I was always very, if I haven't got it, I'm not going to spend it. So I never got into unnecessary debt. I never got into credit card debt. And I only ever went, okay, well, in every job that I had, it's like, okay, I need to save enough money for the next airfare and the next 3 months. I always had a 3-month buffer of living expenses. I never let it go underneath that, because that was my ticket to freedom. I knew that if stuff really went south, that I had 3 months of money I could rely on to pick myself up, go and get a job in Hungry Jack's if that's what I needed to do to get enough income to carry on. Like, I never let money, I guess, force me to stay in a position or a job that I didn't like. Or this wasn't even about liking. I've worked in a lot of jobs I didn't like, but in jobs that compromise my integrity or my safety or whatever. I mean, there's some jobs, you don't want to know the stories. Really unsafe environments. And I got out of them because it wasn't about the money. It was about my safety. So, yeah, it's about knowing deep down whether something's right or wrong, and then having a plan in place to pivot, to move away. It's not just as easy as going, oh, I don't like this, I'm just going to go and do something else. Yeah. It's not about that. It's not that simple. But it's about knowing deep down whether something's right or wrong, and then running with it. The whole heart, gut. What is it? Head, heart, gut.
Yeah, that alignment between them. So when you've got that sort of litmus test, is something right or wrong? You've got that internal like body barometer going on as to making those choices. Are we holding up that right or wrong against a sense of purpose or a particular vision or a way in which you want to contribute to the world? Is that how you're making that sort of judgment? Do you have that sense of this is what I'm here for, or has that developed over time?
That's a really interesting question. I have done, in the last 5 or 6 years, I've done a lot of personal development work. So I've worked alongside a mentor, and we've really sort of delved very deeply into emotional mastery. So really understanding your responses and your reactions and why you are the way you are, and based on things that have happened in the past or not, or whatever, things that you were born with or not born with. And I think I've always had this inner knowing, but I've never really understood it. And I think in my 20s, my inner knowing was very strong, but I was like, that can't possibly be right. I didn't trust myself to act on what my gut knew was right and wrong. And as I've gotten older and done more of this work, I've realised that is my intuition speaking, and my intuition is very rarely wrong. So I can now see, having done all this work, that a lot of the decisions I make are based on my values and based on my values, I guess, like things I hold in really high regard, like truth, for example. Truth is super high on my list, and so is sovereignty. So being the master of my own destiny, like, being able to make choices based on what I want and need as opposed to what other people think I should be doing. And then also telling the truth. So truth when it can be in service. So you tell the truth when it can help you or you can help someone else out of a situation that's not necessarily positive. So I now know that most of the gut decisions I've made are based on one of those two things. It's either truth or sovereignty or a combination of both. I can look back on my life now and know that because I've identified them in the work that I've done. But I don't think when I was 25 I would have told you that I'm making this decision because sovereignty is in my heart value. You know what I mean? But it's taken a while to get there. But
and I think that idea of, I like to call it looking back with kind sight. So to me, kind sight is compassionate reflection. And that's when we can join the dots when we're looking backwards. It's impossible. No one has a crystal ball to cast forward with. But if we do have those anchor points, which to me is self-worth. So when you have that connection to a really strong sense of self-worth and the value that you contribute to the world, then you've got also, there's truth, there's sovereignty, and they are really core components of who you are. And if you've got that sort of clarity, then you can filter your decisions through that lens, which it feels like you've done really instinctively.
Yeah, and service as well. So when I first started doing this work, I thought it was service. So being in and of service, that's what really lights me up. It's where I really come alive. So doing the volunteer work and going out of my way to help people and whatever, like I would do, if I wasn't paid to do it, I'd do it anyway. And they say that, your vocation is where you would carry on doing things regardless of whether you were being paid or not to do it. So obviously I came through the ranks of being a teacher, and obviously being a teacher is a life of service. But yeah, that morphed into truth in service, and then just recently I've discovered this sovereignty piece. So they all work hand in hand. And I now know that when something triggers me, like when I get really like, oh, that is not right, like what sort of button is that pressing? It's more often than not, it's one of those three things in some form that just doesn't sit right with me. So
it's out of alignment.
Definitely a gut place. Yeah.
So one of the biggest changes that you had, you took a 2-year posting in a country, Kiribati. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
It's Kiribati. So the
sounds
T
much
and
better.
the I's and S sound. Yeah. Everyone said, even the guy at the post office when I went said, "Oh, I'm going to Kiribati," and he goes, "Oh no, we've only got a Kiribati. Sorry, that's all we've got." Like, yeah, that's it.
Take it or leave it. So when you were there was a significant experience that then put you in another direction. I mean, you've always been doing the type of work that the flavor has been the same, and that's actually often a connecting thread through people's lives. I've often had conversations with people going, I don't know what my purpose is, but when you look back, the thing that you're drawn to consistently in some small way or big way, depending on where you're at in your life, there's that purposeful play with the type of work that you're doing. But something happened there which really made you sort of pull back and have a good look at what was going on. Can you talk to us about that aspect?
Yeah, for sure. Look, Kiribati was probably the biggest turning point in my life. It's by far the most transformational experience I had. Kiribati is an amazing place. The people there are beautiful. Like I don't think I've ever come across a culture that is so down to earth and self-deprecating. You can't take yourself seriously in a place like Kiribati because you just learn very quickly not to. What I'm trying to say is anything I have to say about Kiribati has got nothing to do with the country itself. The people and the culture there are absolutely phenomenal, and I wish I could be there on a more regular basis to just be surrounded by it, because it is very much gratifying. They do not care what people think of them. The whole, that whole attitude about, I care what people think, but men walk around in pink T-shirts with a blue croc and a green croc and don't care. They just don't care. And that level of I am who I am, don't like it, leave, is so refreshing to live in a community of people who are all very sort of like, who cares what we look like? So, yeah, that aside, Now I've completely lost my train of thought. What was the question?
No, well, what you were doing there was making sure. Yeah, yes. We're making sure that we understand it's not the place or the people, but there was something that happened with you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I went out there to work on a project and then ended up working on a second project. And the project itself was what could be considered as, the upper echelon of my career. So I was-30s in a position where most people had to wait to probably their mid-50s to early 60s to get this kind of plum diplomatic position out in the Pacific. Aid program, tax-free income, all the perks. And for the first time in my life, having been a long time as an English teacher, I was like, oh, wow, like a lot of money, prestige, this is it. I've hit, this is what you work your career towards to get to. But I realised out there that essentially it was just another corporate job. And essentially we were a number. So I went through quite a big health issue out there and ended up being medically evacuated with a number of my organs failing. And it sort of made me realise the aftermath of that. I went back and finished the job and afterwards was really very much treated like a number. And a lot of what I did out there was pretty much ditched the minute that I left. So I literally physically went back after multiple organ failure to finish the project because I didn't want to leave it half finished. And I wanted to make sure that the crew out there had something to run with. And the minute I left, it was just all thrown in the bin. So for a variety of reasons, contractual and all the rest of it. Anyway, long story short, I came back to Australia and went, wow, I actually put my life at risk going back to finish off a project that got shelved the minute I left.
Wow.
So just, let that sit.
Yeah.
I was in hospital. I was in Melbourne for 10 days, literally multiple. Consider this, right? My lungs were partially collapsed. I was having seizures. My heart was erratic. I couldn't sit more than a 45-degree angle up without passing out. I was in a hotel room in Melbourne for 10 days and they said, okay, well, clearly you're exhausted. Take a bit of a break and come back. So I did. Against all advice of friends and family, they're like, just enough already. You've done it. You've got the position. You've made some money. Just come home and get well. I was like, no, I've got to finish this project. I've got to finish it. I'm not going to leave it half done. So can you imagine my headspace when I came back to Perth and found out that it had all been shelved? I was like, wow, like I put this project, I put these beautiful, beautiful people above my own health and well-being. For what? Money? Shit had to change, Angela. Yeah. It really did. It was a point in my life where I thought, wow, like all this stuff I do for other people, all this stuff, I put everyone else first. I literally end up in multiple organ failure and still put other people first. What is wrong with me? And that's where things had to change.
That's like
sorry.
No, but it's a really important story. Like people come to a significant next chapter through different avenues. Yeah, sometimes there is space and grace to choose to move in a different direction, but sometimes it's thrust upon us and we have to respond. We have to respond to it. And then sometimes it's a blend. I mean, there was two pieces here for you. You could have dealt with that, made peace with it and moved back on with the career path that you already had. Mm-hmm. But right then and there, you realize that there was this disconnection, this discontent with the way things are and the way things needed to be to connect with you. That service piece that you said as one of your three anchor points was just trumping everything. And that's when I reckon that's when the seeds of sovereignty were sowed. There's some alliteration for you.
Yeah, no, it was. And you're right. I could have sat there going, this industry and these people and this company and this manager and, you can blame everyone else. But at the end of the day, I chose to go back. No one was forcing me to do it. And that's where I went into, I guess, probably a 6-month period where I was essentially a shell of this adventurer, tourer, fun-loving, because that's how I'd spent the first, 15 years of my career, just sort of gallivanting around the globe and, infecting classrooms with happiness. And, I just got to this point where I was like, well, who am I? What am I doing? Yeah. And so I went up to Jakarta and did some English teaching because I was bored. I didn't need the money. I was just bored. I wanted to do something. And it was up there that being in a classroom and, trumping around Jakarta, of all places, I couldn't breathe up there. Like the pollution is horrendous. And I just went, what are you doing? Like, are you really going to go back into a classroom? Are you really going to, not that there's anything wrong with being in a classroom, but you know, do you really want to keep traipsing around the world, opening up suitcases in new countries, meeting a whole crew and then packing it all down? Like, I was just exhausted. I was so sick of that lifestyle. And so, yeah, that was the point where I was like, something actually has to give. Like, I can't keep doing this, traveling out of a suitcase, although I loved it and I spent 15 years exploiting it. Like, oh, man, I had some fun. I had a lot of fun. But, yeah, something had to change. It was like, okay, well, if you're going to work that hard, how about you work for yourself? You know, if you're going to work yourself to the bone, why don't you run your own business and get that fulfillment for yourself? Because these managing contractors are you're never going to get fulfillment out of them.
I hope you're enjoying this conversation and perhaps it's inspiring you to start your own next chapter. Don't forget to pop over to my website where you can order a copy of my book, Your Next Chapter, Ditch Your Doubt, Own Your Worth and Build the Business You Really Want. In it, I'll take you through the next chapter change cycle that will help you develop the clarity and confidence to move into this next stage of your business and life. Just go to angelarasmus.com/Your Next Chapter book. There's the major pivot point there. So you've had lots of mini chapters, but then bang. And you may have heard the expression, and our lovely listener may have as well. Sometimes the universe sort of tickles you with a feather when it wants you to change. Sometimes it gives you a bit of a smack over the back of the head with a brick. And then sometimes it sends a bus that just knocks you out completely. And you got hit by the bus. That's what happened in this scenario in terms of, you know, the physical side of things that were happening. So you could not continue with what was happening. So there was that discontent. If we look at the cycle of change, the first step is discontent. This is not working in whatever form that is. Sometimes it's a really big reason why not. Sometimes it's this niggling sort of, it's not quite right. But once we work out that we can't continue the way it was, the next challenge is the desire piece. Okay, if I'm discontented with this, what do I desire? And this is the deliberation zone, which is part of the cycle. So at what stage did you get clear on, okay, let's do it for ourselves? When did that clarity strike?
Oh, that deliberation probably took about 9 months. It was when I came back, I was obviously recovering for a little while, and then I went up to Jakarta and thought that I'd just get back in the teaching zone, and then that was like another slap in the face. And I will say, you know, I didn't just get hit by a bus. I got thrown off a cliff by a bus.
Better description.
Literally. And I was like, you're either going to end up in the ocean or you're going to build some wings on the way down. You don't know what the wings are going to look like, but you're going to have to do something. So you just resign yourself at that point, going back into the classroom, like just into teaching. And not that there's anything wrong with teaching. Love teaching. Lots of people are happy teaching. But to me, I just knew that it wasn't going to push all the buttons that I needed pushing anymore. So I came back and I heard of this program that all these girls were doing, and I looked into it and I thought it was well worth the investment. It's actually how I met you, I think. And I did it. And I thought, you know what? Here's the thing. I've got some money left over from this posting out in the Pacific. I've got an offset account for my mortgage. I can play around with this. I've got a little bit of flexibility, and I made a decision. I just thought, okay, if in 5 years you are bleeding money and can't make this work, then what's the worst case scenario? You can go and get a job. You're overqualified. You can always find a job teaching or teacher training or developing curriculum or whatever. I have, you know, the masters and all the qualifications and, you know, all the international experience. Finding a job won't be a problem. So, I mean, I could go and work at Hungry Jack's if I had to. Do you know what I mean? Like, whatever. You can always find a job. Worst comes to worst, you can throw it all away, know that you gave it the best shot, wasn't meant to be, and just go back to teaching, knowing that you've explored it, it wasn't good, and you can move on. Like, what's the worst case scenario? So that's what I promised myself. I just went, right, 5 years. Give it 5 years. Put your best into it, see what happens.
Now, there's a couple of key things there which I think are incredibly important. Number one is that you gave yourself that permission. You gave yourself that space. If it doesn't work in 5 years, not in 5 minutes, not in 5 months, but in 5 years, you gave yourself a very reasonable amount of time to make things work. I think one of our challenges is that we can have an expectation that is dangerous in terms of how quickly something should work. You know, it's not necessarily going to work on our schedule just because we want it to. We need to be aware that things take consistency and persistence, etc. So that part's important. But I loved even more so the fact that you challenged yourself with that thought that I'm just going to give it a shot, because so often we can. Have you read Bronnie Ware's book, Five Regrets of the Dying? Or have you heard of that book?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it, but it's on my list.
It's on my coffee table. I'm yet to read it, but one of the reasons why I want to is because there's a key message in there that Bronnie talks about, which I've seen on the socials and that, which is one of the greatest regrets is people getting near the end of their life and going, I wish I'd done the sort of work that was really calling me. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's that feeling of if we keep putting our desire off to one side because doubt or fear or, what if I don't get it right, or what if it goes wrong? Well, what if it does? But that's an answered question.
Can possibly happen.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the answered question. So we've moved from discontent into desire. You made the decision. So now we're in the design and delivery phases of the model. So talk to us about what you put together, what that has led you to now.
Well, it's fun. Like, I love that cycle that you have, the circle, the cycle, whatever it is, like how those decisions all sort of come about. And what I think is interesting is that sometimes you sort of go between those levels for a little while. Like I went, right, I'm going to do this course. I'm going to follow what this woman says. I'm going to build my empire. And what I thought that was a social media presence and a following and selling lots of courses online and becoming this person with a passive income that, was based on my the videos that I created and the following that I created. I did that for about 3 years, like built up the content and did all the videos and had the channel and whatever. I hated it with my the very inner knowing. I hated it. Honestly, it was a struggle. It would stress me out. I remember going up to Bali and just going, right, I think I just need a digital detox. I think if I just stay off all social media for 2 weeks, my business isn't going to die in that time, but I just need a break. I'm so sick of checking my followers and checking this and checking that and tracking this and tracking that. And in that 2 weeks, I went, wow, I feel human again. I started connecting with human beings, not through a social media channel. And I realized that I was going in the wrong direction. I knew that I was building a business based on all the wrong things. I didn't want to be working that way. I already had a really good referral space, just people who knew me and trusted me and would refer people to me. And I thought at that point, I pivoted again and just went, this is not what I want. I want to run my own business, but not this way. I don't want to be attached to social media. I don't want it to be the first thing I do in the morning and the last thing I do at night. It just wasn't right for me. And look, that's nothing to say about the industry. There's a lot of people that make a lot of money and they love it, and kudos to them and good on them, and there's good money to be made, but it wasn't for me.
Oh,
and
that
it was
is
really hard.
That's such
really
a great
to realize that.
But it's such a great example there. Again, there's 2 points there. Number one is that see how the cycle can work within the cycle. So you've made the decision to move into a new area, but then that discontent comes up again in the design. But what I'm hearing there, Maria, is that one of your superpowers is your connection to your intuition, what's right for you, that sovereignty that you mentioned at the beginning. And so and again, this is something that I've seen so often because I've experienced it exactly the same, as well as seeing it in clients, is that we let go of our intuition and we pick up a formula because that formula has worked for someone else. And so often we think, well, there must be, the bright, shiny options of how it's meant to work. And we can try, it's like putting on a costume that was designed for somebody else. There may be a button or a thread or a pocket that works perfectly, but the whole outfit, there's no way it's been custom built for someone else. So we can't anticipate it. So I salute your recognition. And I think this is a message that everyone needs to hear. There's no right or wrong way to build a business. There's just the right way for you. And it sounds like that's where you've landed now. You've designed and are delivering the business that fits you. Because I really believe your business needs to serve you just as much as it serves your clients. So is that where you've landed?
Exactly. Totally. At that point, I just went, if this is what I have to do to run my own business, I don't want to do it.
Yeah, blah.
I'm not. I'd prefer to be in a bloody classroom again, And I at that point, I just went, you know what? I was raised in a business by parents who there were some tough times and there were some great times, and there were, there's always down seasons and there's always upswings. But they built a business based on reputation well before social media was even a twinkling in whoever it was that designed it mind. Do you know what I mean? Like they did a good job. They went out there and they served people well. They had a great reputation because they went above and beyond what was expected. They were reliable, they were trustworthy. And in the downtimes, my dad would get in a car, go out there and have a cup of tea with his clients, because that's what you did. You built relationships. And I just thought, you know what? That is how I want to run a business. It's how I was raised in business. It's what feels good to me. It's what I know I'm really good at. So I essentially almost overnight dropped the social media presence. Like, didn't drop it completely, but just went, okay, that's not where my focus is anymore. And the relief. And you know what happened? Clients started flooding in. Isn't it always the way? The minute you get rid of the stuff that's no longer serving you, the door's open for stuff that does. So that was like the major pivot really for me was, okay, Kiribati was huge, and then the decision to start my own business. But really, when I dropped all this, I need to be the next social media, whatever, queen. When I dropped all of that, it was like, okay, just get back to what you're really good at and get back to doing the things that really make your heart sing. And that is, for me, being a systems person and helping people organise their chaos. When I got back to just doing that, that's when my business really started to take off. And that's exactly where I am. I hit the 5-year mark and I thought, you know what? I'm not making basquillions, but I am so much happier here than I would be in a classroom. And so from there, I've just steadily grown it. And that's where I am now. It's all working.
And isn't that interesting? Like, our justification often is that, and the words that you just used is, well, I'm not making squillions. And I say, well, I'm not making the multiple six figures. Well, I hear people, ourselves included, apologizing that we haven't hit those success targets. But there's so many other pieces. If we define our own success roadmap, there's the flexibility, there's the satisfaction, there's so many other aspects. So I believe that a next chapter business has got 3 core things, right? Contribution, fulfillment, and financial reward. Like, those 3 combined together in the essence that suits you. Like, what that combination looks like for me is going to be different for you, but it's the same concepts. The 3 of those are all really important.
Yeah, and I subscribe to a philosophy. It's coined by Lacey Philippich, actually. It's financially independent, time rich. So there's a very common one, FIRE, F-I-R-E, and that's financially independent, retire early. For me and for Lacey, it's about being financially independent but time rich. So I might not be earning multiple figures, but I tell you what I am earning, and that is multiple hours and days where I do whatever
I like.
And that is, you can't buy that. You can't buy the freedom that comes with time, having time to do what you want. And there's that whole sovereignty piece. Like, what do I want to do with my time? How do I want to spend my time? Can I survive on less money? It's not even survive. Can I thrive on less money? Yes, I can. Why? Because I'm actually fulfilled. I'm fulfilled with my work. I'm fulfilled with my lifestyle. I've got enough time for exercise and fun and adventure and spending time with the people that I love. And the amount of money that I earn allows me to really enjoy that lifestyle. End of story. I don't need the $800 handbags. I don't need the $15,000 trip to the Maldives.
Yeah, exactly.
It's how you choose to spend your money and how you choose to spend your time. And for me, I've hit the jackpot.
And it's that word that you just used, choice. That's the one. It's like, and it's you being aware of what are the choices that are right for you.
Right? And you only know that with expansive and constrictive fear. So I think we said this at the start, but just very quickly, your gut knows. When you're scared, but it feels like your heart's open, when your chest is open, it's like, oh, I'm scared. It's like when you're going to go and jump off a diving board, it's like, oh, it's going to be scary. But you can feel it's going to be good for you. There's going to be some release. There's going to be some breakthrough. It's going to be difficult, but it's going to work. Your heart actually opens. Your whole chest space opens. That's what I feel. And when there's a constrictive feeling, like you feel like someone's actually, wrapping something tighter and tighter around your chest, like you can't breathe. When there's fear, but there's that I can't breathe feeling, that's when your intuition's telling you, no,
back off.
Right. Yeah, back off. Like fear is designed to keep you safe, right? So it's going to keep you safe because it's actually dangerous, or it's going to keep you safe because it thinks, oh, there's a challenge ahead. So if you want to stay in your safe zone, stay in your safe zone. That's what fear really is. So when it's expansive fear, it's like, yeah, if you don't do it, you'll be safe. But will you have fun? Maybe not. So that's how I know what the fear is saying. Like, do I feel like, yeah, I'm still scared, but it's a good kind of like scary scared? Or is it no, that's really not any good? kind of scared.
Yeah, and that
and that's how I make
discernment,
decisions.
or having that ability to discern, that's one of the most important skills that we can develop. And the only way that you can develop that skill is by being in motion, and then using the hindsight and connecting those dots. It's actually one of the, I love that description. It's a similar thing to what I talk about in the book, which is that the difference between fear and excitement is breathing. Like, they're actually incredibly physically, your physicality of the two of them is very, very similar, but it's then what you make it mean and how you speak to yourself about it. And in this case, if we add that thread of, and how it makes you feel inside, whether it has got that, I love that description of, it's going to be good for me. There's going to be some release, even though it's hard. And that's the essence of stepping into a next chapter in so many ways. It's calling you. You want to make the change. You know it's not necessarily going to be easy, but you know that it's essential. It has to happen.
Yeah. That was like when I decided to take on a property and a set of staff up in Bali. It scared the living daylights out of me, but I knew it's what I needed to do. 4 years later, I knew it had done its time. It was good at the time. It served its purpose, but it was over. And I knew that intrinsically. And Bali literally threw me out. It was like, and you're done. Off you go. That was fun. You enjoyed that. But yeah, you just know when things are right, they're right. When they're wrong, they're wrong. And the more you try and turn that off, the more you're going to be off path. End of story.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, my darling, this whole idea of how you've been jumping around into these new areas, but always being led by heart, being led by intuition, and it served you. Like, sometimes we go down a bit of a detour, we go down a bit of what turns into a dead end, and that's okay as long as we make sure that, let's use the expression for a second, when something fails, I'm doing those air quotes again, that failure is an event, it's not a person. So I've mucked up hundreds of times. Things haven't worked out hundreds of times. But because I've got that connection to self-worth these days, I can let them go and keep on moving. I think self-worth gives you resilience, which is incredibly important for your next chapter. And that's exactly you've had huge amounts of successes, and you've had things that haven't worked out, and you are still moving. You are still moving constantly. And we're here to grow. I think that's what it's all about at the end of the day. We are here to expand, as you described, those different sorts of fear. So if you were speaking to someone now who's listening to this conversation and going, but I don't know if I can, or look, it's such a big change, or it's only little, but that fear, that doubt is coming up, what would you say to her to help her take that step forward?
Well, I mean, trust your gut, obviously, because you are the only one that actually knows what's right for you. It really doesn't matter what people say or people think or whatever. Forget all that. But be like a Kiribati person. Like, don't care what others think is best for you. I mean, I know with me what helped the most was getting a mentor who could help me really delve into that emotional mastery piece and understand who I was and why I was making the decisions I was making. And now, in hindsight, as you say, I get what a lot of my life decisions were all about, those highest values. So if you don't know what your highest values are, or, your purpose really is living within your skills and your strengths, I think. It's not like this sort of epiphany that I was meant to be an artist. I think it's about when you know what your skills and you know what your strengths are, you know where your talents lie, you know what makes your heart sing. That's what living on purpose is all about. So if you're struggling to get there, find a practitioner who can help. Find someone who knows how to help you sort through whatever it is you need to sort through to untap what your strengths and your skills and your talents are. But, start with what made you happy when you were a kid. What did you do when no one was telling you what you could and couldn't do,
Yeah, it definitely helps you look in that direction. At the end of the day, it's not a question of are we valuable? It's a question of how are we valuable?
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
I love your definition of where the skills and the strengths and the talents sort of converge, and you're having a good time. So you're contributing, you're having a good time. Then you're being purposeful. I agree. We get so tied up in knots about this purpose piece. Let's be purposeful. As in contributing and enjoying, having that fulfillment. Let's not try and find the one thing that's going to change the world, because it's
so
too much stress. So much stress.
It's not what it's all about, though. Living on purpose is just living in your truth. It's doing the things that make your heart sing. And if what makes your heart sing is cooking and being creative in the kitchen and showering your friends and family with amazing food, then that's what it is. And there'll be something, yeah, do you know what I mean? Like there'll be something related to that. You tap into the things that really bring you ultimate joy and you'll find it. But yeah, sometimes you need the help of someone who can help you see it a little bit objectively because you're so far in your own self that you can't see it because it's too obvious. It's obvious to everybody else, just not to you. So sometimes you need a bit of help. Don't be afraid to ask for help, I guess, is probably another piece of advice because, yeah, I don't know where I'd be without the help that I got. So, yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help.
No, I agree. I'm in the same boat. When I've asked for help, it's often helped me open the door to the next thing. They've helped me see the door that I couldn't even see was there. So yeah. A big fan of that. Well, my darling, thank you so much for taking us through all these steps. You've really painted a very rich picture of what your travels have been like as each chapter has, opened to the next one. And no doubt in your Nordic world, there is more chapters still to come. So for anyone who's listening and would like to find, who would have thought? Oslo, here I am. But for anyone who's listening and would like to find out more about you and your work, I'll put links on the page as well for the episode. But where is the best place to come see you play?
Just my name, mariadoyle.com. There's a website that is as chaotic as it shouldn't be because that's my area of expertise. But, mechanics always have cars that aren't fixed properly, right? There's a lot of information on my website. Go to my About page and read about my background, my history and whatever, or there's work with me pages. There's all sorts of things on there. So, yeah, if you've got a rainy afternoon, you can lose yourself in it. I can guarantee you there's a lot of stuff to...
I will second that. I will second that. There's a lot of fantastic depth and richness in the website. So definitely the place to go.
Angela.
And thank you so much for spending your time. It's been invaluable and enlightening.
Awesome. I always a fabulous conversation with you, Angela. It doesn't matter how many years have gone past or how many months. It's always a good conversation. So yeah, I wish all your ladies the best of luck. Life is one big adventure. It's what you make of it. So yeah, go out there, jump off a cliff, metaphorically, of course, and find how to grow some wings on the way down.
On the way down. Yeah, it works for many of us. Yeah. Thank you, darling.
Yeah. Okay.
And so for you, my lovely listener, I hope that as we intended, that there is the essence of this conversation which can act as a catalyst for you. You can hear the possibilities that are waiting there for you as well. Some of that brilliant advice that Maria has shared about trusting your gut, that you are the one who knows what's right for you. And that big one, letting go of the opinions of others or the conditioning that has told you what you can or can't do, what is possible for you, whether that means that you want to start a business where it's built on your own skinned knees, the experiences that you have that you want to share with others, or whether you're in a business now and it's just not feeling right, that feeling inside that it is time for a pivot, to change things slightly, to add or remove something. Listen to that feeling, that sense of discontent, which then births desire. So you make the decision to change so you can design and deliver what's right for you and that audience that is waiting for you. That's the essence of a next chapter. And you can step into it. So I'd encourage you to come to my website as well and have a look for the tab where you can discover that your next chapter, ditch your doubt, own your worth, and design the business you really want, is the book that I have for you. It's packed with insights and experience and hopefully a little bit of wisdom that'll help you step into your next chapter. So thank you for your time here today listening to this episode. And until the next one, take very good care. I'll talk with you soon. Thanks so much for listening to the Your Next Chapter podcast. I really do appreciate your time. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. And of course, my website, angelarasmus.com. If you enjoy the show, I'd love you to share it with another woman who's in the midst of business and life beyond 40. And if you love it, a review on iTunes or whatever app you listen in on would be fabulous. Reviews somehow impact that deeply mysterious algorithm and make it easier for the show to be found, which is always a good thing. So thanks again, and until next time, take care.